when people find it struggles leading people because they can't get them respect, or they've lost the respect of their colleagues, or uh, the dreaded, my boss don't like me, my boss don't respect me, my boss thinks I'm doing a horrible job, even though I know I'm hitting a home run every time at the plate. Uh, it only works if you are willing to first take a personal assessment. And I mean an
Love it.
accurate self-assessment of what is it about my behavior that is distancing people from me. And if you can't do that personal assessment, then sometimes a person like a Kevin McNulty can come in and help. But even in those scenarios, you have to be willing to accept
That's right.
feedback, positive and negative.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Grow Yourself, your personal development school of growth. And I got to tell you, this is a very special episode for me, and you'll find out why in just a minute. But I want to start off by saying this, that, there are certain brands in the world, that they become more than the product itself. They become part of a cultural fabric, and Jack Daniels is indeed one of the most iconic. Behind that name is a company, a distillery, with a remarkable history, a commitment to craftsmanship, and a leadership team that understands the weight of carrying a legacy forward. But speaking of brands, in today's episode of Grow Yourself, I want to talk about something that I often coach on. It's what I call your PLB, your personal leadership brand. A PLB is something every leader carries, whether they realize it or not, or whether they want one or not. We all have a personal or leadership brand. It is essentially the reputation you build through your consistency, your decisions, your values, and by the way people feel when they work with you. Your leadership brand is not what you say about yourself, it's what others say about you and what others come to believe and experience with you over time. And so some leaders inherit a strong brand, some create one through decades of showing up with integrity. And the very best leaders are intentional in some form or fashion, deliberate about shaping it. They're aware of it and they protect it and they grow it. Which brings me to my guest today, Melvin Keebler. I've known Melvin for many, many years. We were just talking about it. It seems like about 15 years. I know him both as a client and as a friend. I have watched him grow professionally, starting again about 15 years ago when he was a frontline manager to today, where he holds the prestigious role of Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Jack Daniels Distillery. But there's more. Melvin is a United States Navy veteran and a leader who has spent more than 20 years growing his brand from the inside out and inside Brown Forman. Again, whether it was intentional or not, he has developed quite a prestigious brand. From production to engineering to warehousing and supply chain, he has built a reputation rooted in excellence, humility, and respect for the heritage he stewards. And I know this for a fact, upfront and personal. He also holds the historic distinction of being the first Black or African American to lead Jack Daniels and the Jack Daniels Distillery, a company that generates roughly about $2 billion a year in revenue. So today we're going to explore the kind of leadership it takes to guide one of the most iconic brands in the world and the personal leadership brand behind the man who does it. And I want to say something a little personal here. Melvin is simply a good man. He has a great sense of humor and actually puts up with my jokes. He's steady, he's humble, And he reinforces something that I deeply believe in, and that is that good guys can win. And sometimes they even rise all the way to the top. So if you would, please welcome my friend, Melvin Keebler. Melvin, so great to have you on Grow Yourself.
Thank you, Kevin, and truly thank you for that wonderful introduction. I was listening to you talk about the personal leadership brand. Um, I think you're 100% correct. I don't know how many people, including myself, actually think about through their actions and through their words and through their deeds, whether they are intentional about it or not, they are definitely keep creating a personal brand. So I'll give you a little bit about Melvin Keebler, and then you can ask me whatever. I think there's some things that kind of fundamentally shaped me prior to me joining Brown Forman over two
Mm,
decades ago. And I'll start with uh, I grew up, was born in a little small town outside of Selma, Alabama. Um, Born in 1963, moved inside of the city limits. I think it was probably in the early 70s, 71, 72. So this was post some of the civil rights movement. I am the youngest of five kids, uh, raised by my mom, single, you know,
hmm
she raised all five of us. And I would probably say early on, um, we didn't use words like financially challenged, although clearly, if I think back on it at the time, that was a part of it. But
mm
what I remember the most about it as the strong values that my mom instilled in me, my brother, and my three sisters, and this whole idea that my aunts and my uncles, if any of us misbehave in school or out of school, they had the responsibility to correct that behavior on the spot and then inform my mom, and she would then go about correcting it again.
And it wasn't always pretty, the correction was.
It was not always pretty. I have to choose my words carefully. Although I just think back at how my mom took so little and provided so much. And
Oh,
when I say
wow.
provided so much, I mean provided uh, a commitment to do right and treat people fairly,
Good.
a commitment to always do your best, and a love and understanding of your family and your community.
Mm.
Those things served me well. It served my siblings well. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago, my mom passed, and I will tell you, it was pretty, traumatic time of my life. I went on to Selma High School. Uh, I was the second African American to graduate salutatorian.
Oh, my.
The young lady who beat me is Congresswoman Terry Sewell. She was the first African American to graduate
Wow.
valedictorian. I went on the University of Alabama on a merit and an engineering scholarship, and following that, I went on to the Navy. Spent time. Some of you Navy veterans will know on fast attack submarines, the Sturgeon class. I served in the engineering section on the USS Spadefish and the USS Sea Devil. So those were,
Those are subs?
yes, two submarines,
Wow.
SSN 664 and 666. They were out of Charleston and one was out of Norfolk. Uh, Obviously, that the dedication to the mission. Now, I was serving during kind of the height of the Cold War. Uh, and, I like to laugh. I got a box full of medals, but pretty much every time we deploy, you got a some type of medal.
Yeah.
So, but I I do think that seeing my XO and my CO, and I served under three different captains and four different XOs during my tenure, and then I also spent time in Holy Loch, Scotland. We had a repair facility there. But I just think that community and integrity, respect, courage that my mom had instilled in us growing up, it served me well in the military. It served me well while I was in college. But I think just having, above all, I mean, we talk about um, inclusion and we talk about diversity and all of the things that corporations try to accomplish now. And the military was doing that, they literally years ahead of that. And one of the key factors is, regardless of who you are, where you come from, what you look like, we have a core mission that unites us more so than any differences in personal characteristics.
Wow.
And that's a lesson that I think a lot of CEOs could learn. Instead of trying to force this, focus on what unites you more than what divides you. And you know, you will not have an issue with
That's right.
inclusion.
God, I mean, just so well said, and honestly said like a military person. And I know this because I served as well. In fact, I was just having this conversation on another podcast where I was the guest, and we were talking about leadership, and I couldn't stop talking about the military and how I cut my teeth. And what you just said, this sort of common idea, we understand in the private sector that it's different, that you can't, mandate things, But I recall in the military that it always even for the people who maybe even today you might hear them talk and think that they're not all about the diversity inclusion. In the military, they still talked about this idea that, I don't care who you are. If I'm in the foxhole with you, you're my brother, my sister, whatever the case might be. And
Exactly.
also, it doesn't have a lot to do with the way that you feel about things. It has to do with how you behave. So if
Yeah.
one of my brothers or sisters is being mistreated, I don't care who they are. I'm jumping in to work with them, to help them. And it's just it's because, as you just said, this mission and this focus on what brings us together. We all wear the same uniforms, we all have the same haircuts, and all of these things. And somehow I've seen over the period of years where these biases, these prejudices, maybe for some they never go away, but they fall. They
Yeah.
fall away enough to allow us to be cohesive. You agree?
Well, 100% agree, Kevin. And this is just a fundamental thing. I don't even know during the time that I was serving, which was mid 80s to early 90s. I don't know if that was a discussion as more prevalent it is today, but it was clearly, I would just say it was a natural part of what we did.
Mm,
And I think you stated it perfectly when you said, if I see someone being mistreated, then I have an obligation
that's
to
right.
right that wrong. It doesn't matter who they are
That's right. Or how I feel about them.
or
It's,
how I feel about them.
yeah, it's really incredible. Let me back up just and ask two questions. One about your childhood, and I think you kind of mentioned this, but so let me ask it this way. As a coach, Melvin, I pick up people from where they're at. They could be 25, 35, 45, 55, and already established in their ways. Let's just put it that way. And sometimes I pick up people who you just think to yourself, how is this person even existing with such a crazy mentality, such bad habits, such a bad mindset about people or whatever it is. And then there's others, and I say this very sincerely. I've known you a long time, and I mean this from my heart, that, your reputation before you becoming a senior vice president and the general manager was stellar. I've had dozens of conversations with your people about Melvin Keebler. And the first thing that happens when I would mention your name or they mention your name is they'd smile. Start with that. And then they would just say things like, I mean, Melvin's just the kind of manager or whatever that you can go to. I can talk to him. By the way, he'll talk to me straight. He won't give me a bunch of BS, but he just has a way of saying things. So then there's people like you who get into this position, and I guess I'm just trying to figure out what is, it is your upbringing, I think, in part, as you suggested. But what about those who don't have those ideals, those values instilled in them like you did? What do they do? Where do they pick up? They know they're not getting along with people, for instance. Where do they pick up in midlife and straighten that out?
Yeah, I think sometimes we make things far more complicated than they should be.
Mm,
Um, if you want to gain the respect, admiration, and trust from peers, colleagues, supervisors, um, whoever, people that you are leading, you have to start with giving them the same thing that that you would want. I mean, this is the old golden rule. It's relevant today. It's relevant in almost all situations. I cannot expect someone to trust me and respect me without affording them that same opportunity. I have to reach out. Um, we started 15 years ago. Part of the journey that we started on was Kevin getting to know me, and I'm glad that you had an opportunity to go and talk to some of the people that I led at the time, some of the people that were my colleagues, and some of the
mhm,
people that I worked for. Um, I did not intentionally set about saying I want to be a well-liked person.
mm.
I intentionally set about saying I want to treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Wow.
Uh, if I am talking to a direct report or someone that I'm leading, whether it be in the military or whether it be at Brown Foreman or whether it be at the chemical plant that I worked at prior to joining Brown, my first thought is I have to listen intently. I don't try to interject initially my thoughts of what's happening or what they're going through or come in to try to solve their issue. I am there to provide them a sounding board, a person that can lend. And I may fundamentally disagree with everything that they're sharing with me. And in some cases, I have. I may, throughout their dissertation, find out you have totally misunderstood what is occurring in your career or in your personal life or whatever. Back in nuclear school, we used to call that a gross, and I can see some of the uh, exams I used to put in. If you missed a concept, they would just put GCE. That meant gross conceptual error. You are so far out of park on what's happening. I don't even know how to reel you back in. But that's not my intent to stop that person when they're talking to me.
Yeah.
Because if I do, I might miss how they got to that gross conceptual error or
Mm,
that misunderstanding. I have to fully sit there and listen to everything because if I miss one little nugget, that would be, well, he doesn't care about me.
mm, mm,
And so the point that you made when you say, okay, so when people find it struggles leading people because they can't get them respect or they've lost the respect of their colleagues, or uh, the dreaded, my boss don't like me, my boss don't respect me, my boss thinks I'm doing a horrible job, even though I know I'm hitting a home run every time at the plate. Um, it only works if you are willing to first take a personal assessment. And I mean an
Love it.
accurate self-assessment of what is it about my behavior that is distancing people from me. And if you can't do that personal assessment, then sometimes a person like a Kevin McNulty can come in and help. But even in those scenarios, you have to be willing to accept
That's right.
feedback, positive and negative. And I can tell you, and I'm pretty sure you ran across this. I've ran across um, people in my career that, despite my best efforts, despite all the tools and things that I've used, they were not able to make the next step.
Yeah.
And early on, I used to consider that a failure on my part.
Hmm.
And then I come to realize I don't know if they will ever get to where they need to be. Um, But the reality is, at the time that I was interacting with them, they were not ready to take that next step. I kind of use the same analogy about smoking. Uh, I don't care how, there's a ton of tools out there to help people mitigate any type of addiction. And I don't care what you put them through. The first step is they have to be in the right place and they have to be willing and ready to move forward.
Yeah. That's just I mean, it's just so well said. I would like to even what I'd like to actually give a little bit of inside ball here about Melvin. That first of all, I know for a fact that you're a very good listener because many people have said that, but I've also heard people say this that again, in speaking about you and your style, they would say that you often would sit in the leadership team meetings and not say much, and then and they and they came to know you that you only spoke up when you had something important or relevant to say, but you were always listening. And they said whenever Melvin spoke up, it was like, what was that? E.F. Hutton, everybody listened. And so to your point that people have actually stated this, but I will say this, the other thing is that you have a really good poker face when you're listening too. It's very hard to tell what you're thinking, except when Melvin is saying in the back of his head, "Oh, that's a load of bullshit." You have a certain little grin that I noticed about you when 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 you're about to call out somebody's BS. I say that in jest, but you do. You kind of have a poker face in doing that. So let me just ask you before we. Well, no, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. So, Melvin, talk to us kind of briefly, through the steps that you took in Jack Daniels to eventually get where you are today. Where did you start?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, after my service, I spent about 7 or 8 years at a chemical plant. I lost three of my colleagues in an explosion. It was a
Mm.
plant in North Alabama.
Mm.
Probably one of, up until that point, and I worked for the safety manager in one of my roles, but I had various roles there. So I, after 8 or 9 years at the chemical in the chemical industry, and then the time that I had spent in the Navy, working in the nuclear operations sections of fast attack submarines, having lost three of my very close friends, and one of them worked for me. I I thought, you know, I've had a pretty successful Navy career. I was one of those what they deemed high potential, high performers at the chemical plant. Here I was, 38 years old, and I really thought my career had peaked.
Oh my.
Uh, and so I knew I had a path forward at the chemical plant,
Hmm.
but that losing those work colleagues had an impact, and I was like,
Mm.
you know, I would like to kind of do something different. A headhunter sent me a job posting that says a well-known beverage manufacturer in Middle Tennessee is looking for a processing manager. Um, and I did not know it
I was
was
going to say
Jack
you could
Daniels
almost
at the
narrow it
time.
down, but okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I it's like, well, why can't they disclose who? So
Hmm.
anyway, after I told the um, headhunter that I was interested, and I really, honestly, I had every intention of spending my career at that chemical plant. But after that happened, I was like, you know what?
Mm.
Let me just kind of explore other opportunities. Well, after I told him I was interested, and I'm still friends with the guy today, and I won't even call his name, but anyway, he reached out to Jack Daniels' leadership team. He got back to me and they said, they reviewed my resume and qualifications. They said, well, good. It's Jack Daniels, and they want to bring you in for an interview.
Wow.
I was like, Jack Daniels? I was talking to my mom at the time. I always bounce stuff off. It's just like,
Hmm.
hey, you're doing so good and you spend all of this time working on education. You want to go work for Jack Daniels? So the the respect that Jack Daniels have from being in 170 countries around
Yeah.
the world, and then um that knowledge about it being a great company owned by Brown Foreman, a lot of that stuff is not known in Alabama.
Okay,
so,
fair enough. No, no, no,
yeah,
that's
so
fair enough,
everybody is
actually. Yeah, yeah,
hearing
yeah.
Jack, but
Yeah, but it's
you
usually
know,
from, partaking,
yeah, it's usually for partaking. But it doesn't take but a little bit of research to find out
Right.
that the corporation, Brown Foreman Corporation, has some values and missions. When I say that their core values are integrity, respect, excellence, teamwork, those are just like right in line with everything that is who I believe at my core Melvin is.
Wow.
So, but that's not something that you know right about. The first thing you hear is this famous brand,
Yeah.
Jack Daniels. Why do you want to leave the nuclear industry or the
Yeah.
chemical industry to go make
Yeah.
whiskey?
Yeah.
But then we had a long conversation. So, long story short, I started off as the processing manager. Um, had a small department, and that's for those whiskey drinkers out there, that's the group that receives the whiskey after maturation and prepares it with various treats and filtration for it to be bottled.
Mm.
So, small group. I want to say that the average tenure of that group when I started was 30 years. So they
Wow.
had some people in there who had already spent the vast majority
Yeah.
of their life. And I can tell you one of the things that I think helped shape me was, you know, those were people who had been doing this for a very long time.
Mm.
I did not go into that role. Like, for one thing, I had never worked into the industry. So it was clearly my responsibility to lean on and respect those people. And I
That's
think
right.
at some point they was like, this is our boss, but it's our job to train him to make
Yeah.
sure.
But
And I think
right.
I established that type of relationship with them.
But by the way, contrary to perhaps popular belief, that is also the military way, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's exactly
the wise young lieutenants, even captains, maybe even majors, that they do lean on the chiefs and the master sergeants or whatever the case might be. So
100%.
yeah.
Because these are subject matter experts. Now,
Mm,
obviously, my part of my DNA is to dive in and to learn every aspect of
hmm.
whatever operations.
Yep.
But I'm not going to go into an operation when I got a 40-year employee and try to tell them to change their behavior. My first task was let me find out what's working. Morale was not good.
Mm.
Let me find out why morale is not good. And then let us together as a team work together to eliminate those things that are obstacles to you being successful and to you coming in here feeling better.
I love it.
And
Just love
so
it.
most of those, and I'm still friends with all of that those groups, but you know, we would do little department dinners, and I remember one time. This is probably after I had been here, and probably had been there for about a year. So I'm immersed in, and we've done some challenges, and we've put in some technology, and uh, and usually I don't want to be like age bias, but a lot of time of the boomer generations, they're a little bit more hesitant to accept
Right.
new technology, and most of those were them. By the way, I'm a boomer too. I'm like the last year of the
Yeah.
boomer, but anyway, but these were people in some cases, I
Mm.
was 38, maybe 39 at the time. Well, these were people that were in their 50s, in some cases 60s, and they
Yeah.
had been around Jack their entire life, and their dads and moms had worked here, in some cases, the same department. They knew. But, after a while, um, there's one good thing about bringing in new people because a lot of times status quo means the same ideas just get recycled and recycled, and you just try to improve upon what you have instead of trying to embrace something new. And so I came in, we started implementing some new technology, and they was all kind of pushback.
Yeah.
But at least by then I had gained their trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had some new databases, some new stuff, and some new control system, and one guy, really good friend of mine. He came up to me after it had got installed, probably about 3 or 4 months later, and he was like, "You know something, Keebler? I don't even know how we operated before we had these." I was so he was one of the ones that did not. Was like, I don't even know how we ran this
That's funny.
department before this stuff.
That's funny.
He said, "You making it so
That's
easy.
funny.
You're gonna work us out." I said, "No, you should have the tools when you come into work to be successful." I think here's the other thing. I do want to kind of point this out because people, you said something. Well, Melvin does not mind sharing with you honest feedback, even when it doesn't align with what your thoughts. And to me, Kevin, I do build personal relationships at
Yes.
work. It's kind of hard not to when you spend that
Yes.
much time. But this is a pretty simple concept. You have a task to do when you come into work. I am asking you to do that task because you have failed at it. This ain't personal. I
Right.
might still like you. I might still want to go have a beer with you, but that's not going to make me not hold you accountable to tell you something. I don't ever interject. I've seen new managers and new supervisors get upset because someone is not performing. And it's like, what? Why is your blood pressure going up? you simply say, the expectation is A, B, and C, and you're doing A and C, and you're totally forgetting B. So tell me why you missing B. This ain't something to get personally upset
No,
about. I
100%.
mean, this is just and then you just kind of
Listen,
keep,
listen up, leaders. Listen up, folks, to what he's saying here. It's so important.
yeah. And I think when you go into a meeting trying to correct a bad behavior and you go into it angry, then the immediate reaction from the person you trying to counsel is, my boss don't like me.
Yeah. They take
You
it
have
personal.
pretty much lost the battle right up front.
Right. Yeah. They
You will
take it
never
personal
get
because it
that
sounds
person.
personal. That's right.
Yeah, that you making it sound personal
Yep.
instead of addressing the
Mm,
behavior.
yep. That is
But yeah,
incredible.
so I had a few wins here and there in that group, and you know,
So step on through, if you will. I'm going to push you a little bit here because I know you've got a hard stop, but push on through
yeah.
to
So
when you get to this point.
yeah, so various. Well, somebody told me it's like, hey, and I don't know if this is true. They say, hey, if you're not getting promoted every 2 or 3 years, you're falling behind. I was like, well, I said, it may be true in the military too. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to grab some wins. I eventually took maturation and I got promoted to, I think at the time that you and I met, which was, about 8, 9 years into my career, I had just made director, or I was right about to be promoted to
I think you were
director.
just about to be promoted. Yes.
Yeah, so and that gave me responsibility for about 3 or 4 departments, including the quality. Um, I did okay. I like to jokingly say, hey, I kept getting promoted because they kept trying to find something that I could be successful at. It's like he's failed at this, let's promote him.
The old Peter
Uh,
principle.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but every 2 or 3 years I did.
Yeah.
I think was not too long after that, my boss retired. I got promoted to assistant general manager. Uh, and in that role, I led the technical services group, which was the engineering, environmental,
Mm,
some other areas.
remember that. Yeah.
And eventually, I took responsibility for the distillery production operations. And then, probably about 3 years ago, we did kind of some reorganizations and some restructuring. We had some people that left the organization. My boss at the time got promoted to chief information officer, which kind of left the role of general manager for Jack
Mm.
Daniels open. So I was asked to do that. I gladly accepted. I at the time we had some cooperages, which is those plants that assemble the barrels. So about 3 months after I took the general manager of Jack Daniels, I also got another promotion. Listen, it was coming so fast I couldn't even post it on social media. And I did. I'm not that versed in social. I don't use social media a lot, but I think I felt a little humble and I did not want to share. Literally within 3 or 4 months, I'm serious. I think I had got about 3 promotions, fairly significant promotions. Um, but I would tell you, um, no, trying to be humble. Um, I think my success. First, I want to thank my family that kind of instilled in me. I want to thank God for blessing me because
Man,
none of these things are possible. You got to have faith.
that's right.
So I don't take success, and I don't think take these things. Oh, Melvin is wonderful. I think I think I was blessed and fortunate. Um, and I think you also have to take on this kind of personal commitment. This old thing is, hey, if opportunity knocks, because without some of the other changes in the organization, I wouldn't have been afforded that opportunity. But when those opportunities come, you have to position yourself to be ready.
That's right.
I want to be asked,
That's right.
regardless if the opportunity come, I want my name in the hat. So
Yes. I actually remember that conversation that you and I had one time about whether your name would come up around the table. I think this was actually leading to the directorship, but let me move on and just ask a couple more questions here, Melvin, that I feel are, somewhat important to ask you about. I will ask you, first of all, what do you do you recall how it felt when you first took on the role of general manager of Jack Daniels? I mean, I think most people would understand this, but again, having worked with you all for many, many years and gotten to know so many people, I know the pride that exists within Jack Daniels. I mean, people recognize that they work for a rock star brand and are very proud to say that. And it's probably the most iconic, certainly spirits brand, but I would say one of the most iconic brands, period, in the world. And suddenly Melvin Keebler is the general manager, is in charge. Do you recall how you felt when I mean, was there a moment that you just went, wow, what?
yeah. Well, I you know the I'm glad you mentioned that because when I was first approached, obviously the process from the time that they asked to the time that I actually got, because there's a lot of things that have had to happen at kind of our executive level, and having the responsibility for Jack Daniel's production operation is something that our board of directors, the family that owns Brown Foreman, the
The
Brown
Browns.
family,
Hmm.
they consider that a very important and strategic role
Yes.
in Brown Foreman's growth and their strategy.
I
So,
mean, Jack Daniels is the flagship by far, correct? Of Brown Forman's.
correct,
I think I what
correct.
10, 9 or
So,
10. Yeah.
so first of all, I felt honored that I was being asked.
Mm.
But from the time that I was asked to the actual announcement, probably was a couple of months. So I had a period of time that I
Before.
had to think, oh wow, boy, I'm nervous. This is a lot.
Uh, yeah.
But so
Yeah.
first, the
Yeah.
the complete just excitement and honor and being
Mm.
elated.
Gosh.
Then to the fact that, do I have what it takes
Yeah.
to keep this wonderful tradition going? So the first thing, after all the excitement and the elatement and congratulations, you have to sit down and ask
Yeah.
yourself, you know, am I ready? What
Mm.
is it going to take?
Wow.
And mainly, God, please don't let me mess this up.
Yeah.
This is, please don't let me mess this
Yeah.
up. There are so many people
Yeah.
that for generations in this small town of Lynchburg have been so dedicated
Yeah.
to every day we make it the best we can. But then to the huge number of fans and to all the drinkers out there and for just this totally American iconic brand, I don't want to. I
Yeah.
don't want to be the one that mess this up. And
No.
so I will tell you what probably when someone gets a fairly significant promotion, I'm going to just throw it out there. There are people who think it should have been me.
Okay. I get
There
it.
are people who say, um, why him or her?
Hmm.
There are people that say,
Hmm.
what I can tell you that probably helped me the most as I journeyed into the role is, first of all of those relationships that I built from working in every department at Jack Daniels
Mhm.
and having built that trust and respect to, I would say, universally, people in Lynchburg who worked at Jack Daniels were genuinely happy and elated and said, I don't know how many people here. Now, obviously, I got the congratulations from all of my colleagues, and I've
Sure.
established quite a few relationships in our corporate offices in Kentucky. But when you got people that you are now leading coming up to you saying, "I'll follow you anywhere," they could
Yes,
not have picked a better person. I am so happy for you. Well, that empowers you to be successful.
that's right.
Uh,
You know they've got your back. Yeah, no, no,
You
no, no,
know, you know they
absolutely.
got your back. So
Wow.
from that standpoint, quickly realized it's not about
Yeah,
Melvin. It's never been about Melvin. It's always been about Melvin
yeah.
and his team, Melvin and his colleagues, Melvin and his coworker friends. We are going to be successful
Yes.
because we are going to do it together.
Yes, you know something, listen. And now this takes me a little bit back to what I first talked about, and that is the leadership, your personal leadership brand. Your brand, that you developed over many years, but certainly at Jack Daniels, it preceded you. And and when it all came into place, it wasn't even, and again, I'm not trying to say I know everything inside, but I've worked with you a long time, and I know that there was a genuine swell of, wow, they picked Melvin and they were happy about this. So let me add one more thing to this because, even as sort of a really calm, cool, collected professional that you are, certainly when you know a one or two people, even one person that thinks it should have been me, that puts pressure on even a calm, cool professional. But let me add another component, which I know you don't talk about a lot, but I'm going to say it. And that is the fact that historically, you are the first African American person to take on that role. Did that add pressure to you, Melvin? I
I,
do. I want to
I
know what you think about that as well, because again, you're not the type of person to put that at the forefront. I think first and foremost, you want to do a great job and this sort of thing and take care of your people. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up.
so when you are the first minority, um, you know,
True, first minority.
it,
Actually, you're right. Yeah.
yeah, so there is always a tendency, if you are the first,
Hmm.
to put some additional pressure on you. I think it is simply because you don't want to be the last. No, I'm not going to say here, I
Right, right, right,
am,
right, right, right.
I'm not going to say here I'm representing all black men or black African Americans.
Okay.
I'm not going to try to carry that much weight. What I have a responsibility to do is to do my best to be fair and to uplift people regardless. So
Love it.
I think some things that people lose when we start talking about inclusion is what you're tasked with is identifying true talent, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity, race, sexual orientation. When I say inclusion, I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about making sure I have not let any of those personal traits or factors hinder somebody that should otherwise have been successful.
Wow. Wow.
So for me, I have to show in that operating within that space, because this is another natural tendency when you are the first. I have an obligation to prove that I have well deserved and earned this. I have to think it in my mind.
Mhm.
This is not about me being the first African American male. This is about me being qualified and capable, and then demonstrating it through results that the
Unbelievable.
faith that the organization put in me was
Yeah.
well deserved.
My gosh. I
And
mean,
I expect that from my team. And
hmm
let me, and you know this, I have mentored and coached
hmm
um, females in our
That's right. I
organization,
know them.
other minorities,
Hmm
um, and and I always tell them this: what we're trying to do here is to, if there is something about your
hmm
personal trait that is an obstacle to you being success, I'm here to eliminate that.
Wow.
Now, it's also up to you to eliminate any
That's right.
obstacles from your success that's due to performance or other
That's right.
behavior.
That's
So
right. And
I'm
yes,
going to put everything on an equal field,
that's right.
and then you should be successful
That's
if
right.
you apply yourself.
That's right. And I have to point this out, and I know we're running out of time here, and I've got about only about 100 questions more. This idea that, and I'm going to say this, I'm not saying it for you, but there is a growing mentality in, I'll say, the United States of America, in the professional world, that has this entitlement thing that I should be this, and because whether it's race, color, national, whatever it is, not even all of that, just people have
Oh
gotten
yeah.
this mentality. And I will tell you, as a coach, not you, but the folks out there, and I think you're going to get behind this, is that you can have the greatest coach, the greatest mentor, the greatest tools around you. And you said it a bit earlier, but you have to take 100% responsibility for who you are and what you do moving forward, regardless of all those things. You see, I mean, I've coached a bunch of people out at Jack Daniels, in other words, and the successful ones are not from my coaching; they're from the people that go out and do the work. I
You, you,
mean,
you're, well, Kevin, obviously you know this, and you and I have had several deep conversations about it. Listen, the pendulum swings when it
yes,
comes to cultural, societal behaviors and
hmm
what is, the trend at the moment.
yes,
You and I both know that in the aftermath of George Floyd and Brown Foreman, along with several other corporations, rightly lean in on, we want to make sure that we're doing things right. Uh,
yes,
I would also say that there were a lot of people out there who used that moment to perhaps drive agendas that was not in the best interest of the people that they were professing to
wow,
help or the corporation. So
wow, wow.
I always think that what keeps me able to sleep at night is, at its core, if I want to be have an inclusive culture, it starts with just treating people with dignity and respect, treating people right.
Yeah.
So we try to. There's
And
a
by the
whole
way,
lot of
you
training that I
accomplish.
have gone through.
Yeah,
There's a whole lot of terms that people growing
yeah.
up in Selma, Alabama, and it's like, but this word is a trigger, and this I was like, oh my God, do you have any idea of the stuff? I, at the end of the day, it's all about treating people fairly.
That's right.
You know,
And when you do that, it covers. the other things. It covers
It
the
covers it.
inclusion, the dignity, the team building. It covers all of that. So a couple more questions because I've already gone past your time. Real quick, I can't not mention the loss of Steve Jones as your HR director. We
Yeah.
got to say something, even if it's not right, about him in this podcast.
So the funny thing about that, so Steve and I still communicate weekly and sometimes daily. He was both a friend and a mentor. Um, and I think throughout his almost 27, 28 years he spent here, and that is a long tenure
Yeah,
for an HR director at
this
any
is.
corporation,
Agree.
especially given all the changes that he saw at Jack Daniels. But one of the things that I admire most about Steve Jones was he had this ability to listen to people, understand, interpret what the rules and regulations were, both federal, state, and whatever the corporate
Hmm.
and Jack Daniels policy was, and craft something or give people advice that fit into all of them. Uh,
Yes.
It met federal policy, it met state, it met what
Mhm.
Brown Foreman, and still was able to help the individual. So, a very good friend, a good
Mhm.
mentor. Um, at his retirement, the number of people who came up and talked about the positive impact that he had
Mhm.
on their lives, and I very well could have been one of them
Mhm.
too. Which just amazing,
Yeah.
just a genuine.
Yeah.
And he had this. I think I'm not going to go all of these different leadership styles, but he did have a servant type leadership style.
He really did, actually. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, that's right. And so now, thank goodness you have in his wake Jennifer Short, who has taken over and I imagine is doing a stellar job as well.
she is amazing, outstanding,
Yeah.
well prepared,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
would probably tell you, her being. Listen, this is something I would like to share with your listeners.
Please.
One of the things that we have to do as leaders, one
Hmm.
of the critical things is prepare bench strength, prepare your
Mm.
successor, prepare the next leaders. You know, you can kind of tell how good a leader is doing that. And if they take vacation for a week or 2 weeks and whatever area of their responsibility, if it's fall apart, people say,
Yeah.
oh, we cannot operate without him or her.
Yeah.
But then I
Yeah.
put that on him or her.
Thank you very much. No, well said. And that, by the way, is another good military trait. I might have to say that. Two more quick questions. One, please share about the heroes portion that you have brought into Jack Daniels, which is incredible. Please just share a little bit.
All right. So we started this program about 4 or 5 years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
Um, and what it is we take veterans serving at Jack Daniels, and then we ask them to select a single barrel whiskey uh, that you know, is their preference, and they think is also a good representation of what our wonderful active duty and veterans members, because Jack Daniels has this outstanding relationship with the military, and in fact, some of our military accounts is some of our best accounts.
Wow.
I think it's that courage, honor, and commitment. So I was fortunate enough to be the first one to select the Heroes bottle.
Mine.
Uh, then COVID hit. So
Mm.
the program was initially set up, we would pick a different veteran every year. So for like the first 3 years, due to COVID and supply chain disruption, I think I did mine 3 years. But anyway, the good thing about not only It's sold in military accounts.
Love it.
Proceeds from that goes to support Operation Ride Home, which is a program designed in partnership with YMCA to help
Mm,
active duty, kind of junior enlisted service
yeah.
members get away home during the holidays to be with their families. Uh, Very proud to support that. And finally, we got everything together. This is the first year we've had someone other than myself, and we selected two twins, LB and JB McGowan. They're
Yes.
92 years old. They look identical. I think they went
Yeah.
into the Army in late 50s. Served about 30 or 40 years at Jack Daniels after their Army career, but they spent time in Germany and all different places. But what I like most about those two young 92-year-old men is when they did their selection. And then, one of them's son also served in, and they got a grandson. But when they did their selection here at the distillery, their entire family came to support them picking the whiskey. And I got an
Unbelievable.
opportunity to meet them. I,
I saw the
I
photos.
don't
Yeah.
know. It's just a wonderful. So the
Yeah.
two, LB and JB, wonderful mentors to
Yeah.
many. But then I meet, and I can just say this is an old saying. I looked at the entire family. It's like, my God, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Wonderful throughout, all the
Yeah.
way down to the great, they're just great people. It gives you
It really is.
inspiration.
No, I've met
There's
some
so
of them.
much stuff out there. Trump.
Yeah.
These are inspiring, uplifting people, and it's far more people like
Yeah.
that in the world than there are the troublemakers.
Man, amen to that. So, one last quick question. When you write your book, can I be one of the people that endorse it? I just want to ask that. Yeah.
I'm a humble guy.
Yeah.
I'll let you write it, and
I
I'll
mean,
just
even though I'm an
reach
Air
out to
Force
you.
guy, I mean, come on.
You do a better job of highlighting and promoting me than I could ever do myself. So,
Yeah. Well, listen, Melvin, I mean, anything else you want to share before we get off here? Because, again, I know you're already late for the meeting that you are leading, but just anything else you'd like to share?
no, I'll just say, hey, listen, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for your
Mm,
friendship. Thanks for it is when I say that any type of success I've had, it is been the support of many others,
mm.
family, friends, colleagues, and I clearly include you in that
Oh,
list.
man,
So
that's,
thanks for having me, and I hope everyone out there enjoys it. I hope I wasn't too
no,
boring.
it was
And I
everything and more, Melvin, 100%. Listen, man, thank you so much. God bless you. And we'll talk to you soon, then, I hope. Okay.
All right. Talk
All
to
right.
you soon.
Thanks so much. All right.